The auction room was cold, too cold for living beings. The lights above were harsh and white, making the floor shine like metal ice. Chains rattled in the corner, voices murmured, sharp and eager. And then they brought her in. She walked slowly, bare feet against the steel floor. Her body, painted in glowing red symbols, was on full display. Auction numbers ran across her arms, thighs, and even her chest. Her skin, once smooth and blue like the sky before a storm, was now marked like a thing, not a person. She did not cry. She had cried days ago when they took her children. When she screamed and scratched until her nails cracked and they dragged her away, that was when the tears dried. Now she only stared, silent, dignified. The crowd leaned forward. "She's a rare breed," the announcer boomed through a voice amp. "Part of the Mindweaver bloodline. You'll notice the auction marks burned and painted for quick scan access." Laughter echoed. Someone whistled. "She's been bred once already. It's a healthy offspring." Psychic touched. "Hidden bidding. Begins at 10,000 credits," voice yelled. The bidding began like fire. Voices shouted over each other. Greedy faces twisted with hunger. No one cared what she was, what she felt. She was exotic.
Boss.
Powerful. Breed able. Just a prize. But one man didn't speak. He stood in the back, arms folded, face unreadable. Muscular worn boots, dust-covered coat. His eyes locked on her like a question he hadn't asked yet. 20,000. 25, 30, 50,000 credits. The human finally said, "Quiet." The room went dead silent. No one else spoke. Even the announcer choked on his words. 55-0? You sure, human? The man didn't answer, just nodded. The silence returned, and then the hammer dropped. Sold to the human in Sector D. A mechanical door hissed open and guards walked toward her. She flinched. Slightly, but they didn't touch her. The human stepped forward and raised his hand. "Don't grab her," said, "but she walks on her own." The guards stepped back. For the first time in weeks, she stood without a hand forcing her. Her steps were small, but she moved. Her eyes flickered toward the human, searching, cautious. He didn't stare at her like the others. He looked at her face, not her body, not her marks. He took off his coat and held it out. She didn't take it. He gently placed it over her shoulders without touching her skin. The crowd didn't cheer. They whispered. Some laughed. What's he gonna do? Hug her? To death. Why pay that much and not enjoy the show? The human said nothing. They walked out of the auction chamber together, slow, quiet, her eyes still downcast, her legs trembling beneath the weight of days without rest. Outside, 2 security bots blocked the exit. Biometric confirmation. One said. The man scanned his ID chip. The screen flashed green. Name of property? The bot asked. The man paused. Not property, he replied. Her name is... He turned to her. Her lips moved slightly. No sound came. He leaned closer. Your name? She hesitated. Then softly, Nija. Yeah, he turned back to the bot. Name is Naya. The bots allowed them through. They walked down the loading ramp to a ship. A small freighter, nothing special, but clean. Private, safe. Inside, she sat on a padded bench, stiff, silent. She didn't speak, just stared at her feet. He opened a storage unit and pulled out a blanket, setting it beside her. There's food if you want it, he said, or rest. No one will touch you here. She didn't respond. He stood there for a moment, unsure. Then he nodded and turned to walk away. Wait, she said, barely above a whisper. He stopped. You paid 50,000, she said. Why? He turned back slowly. Because no. One else looked at your eyes. Her breath caught. No one had said anything kind in so long. She didn't even know if she still believed in kindness. She pulled the coat tighter around her body, and for the first time since her children were taken, she let herself breathe. Nija couldn't sleep, even though the walls of the ship were quiet. even though the floor didn't shake with boots, even though no one shouted numbers or orders at her. Still, her heart wouldn't let her rest. Her children were out there, somewhere, behind a wall or across a planet or in a metal cage just like the one they had thrown her in. She saw their faces every time she closed her eyes, small, frightened, pressed against bars. Waiting for her, she sat on the edge of the bed in the corner of the human ship, the thin blanket clutched in her hands. Across the small room, the man worked silently. He wasn't like the others, didn't watch her. He didn't ask for anything, just fixed a loose panel. Then pulled out a small round device and pressed a few buttons. She watched him from the corner of her eye. "What are you doing?" she asked finally. He looked up. "Tracking logs. I'm trying to find where they took your children." Her fingers curled tightly around the blanket. "You knew?" He nodded. "I heard the guards whispering. Said the little ones had mind glow. And were being kept for private bids, somewhere near Port Sola, off the main grid." She stood up. Her legs were weak but steady. "Take me there." He didn't argue. He just said, "We leave now." As the ship lifted off, Nija sat in the cockpit beside him. Her hands trembled in her lap. Outside, the stars stretched and bent as the ship jumped into transit. "You don't know me?" she said after a long silence. "No," he replied. "Then why are you helping me?" He kept his eyes on the navigation display. Someone should. The outer zone of Port Sola wasn't on any open map. It was where things went to be hidden. Weapons, slaves, illegal tech, and children. The place reeked of oil and filth. Rusted pipes hung from ceilings. Drones buzzed through dark alleys. No one smiled here. No one looked each other in the eye. The human walked straight, his coat wrapped tight, a small chip in his hand. Nija followed, hood covering her silver hair. Keeping her head down, they reached a gate guarded by two men with rifles and dead eyes. "Private inventory. You can't pass," one growled. The human held up the chip. "Wait, my name's on the list. Lot A32 and A33. I'm here for inspection." The guard scanned it, then grunted and opened the gate. 5 minutes. No recording. Inside it was darker. Rows of cages lined the wall, metal boxes, each with a number. Most were empty. Then she heard it, a soft cough, a tiny voice. "Mama." She ran. She fell to her knees in front of the cage. Her two children were huddled together, thin, dirty, eyes glowing faintly with that same silver shimmer she once had. The older one reached through the bars. "Mama, they said you were gone." Nija pressed her face against the cage, tears rolling freely now. "I'm here. I'm right here. I didn't stop looking." The younger child sobbed and crawled to the bars. "They called us freaks, said we'd be sold to the lab." "No one will take you again," she whispered. Behind her, the human was already moving. He pulled a tool from his belt and started unlocking the cage. The guards outside didn't hear. Silent alarm. They didn't see what he did to the locks, but when the cage swung open and the children fell into their mother's arms, they knew something was about to change. They didn't leave through the front gate. The human led them through a back tunnel, small enough that Nija had to crawl while holding her youngest. A drone spotted them, but before it could raise the alarm. The human fired once, clean and silent. Back on the ship, Nija wrapped her children in warm blankets. Her voice was soft but strong again. "They haven't eaten real food in days," she said. "I have rations in the locker," the man replied. "They're safe now." She looked at him differently now, not like a buyer, not even like a rescuer, but like something more dangerous. A man who cared when no one else did. She stood quietly as the ship left Port Sola behind. Her children were asleep on the floor, her arms wrapped around each other. She turned to the human. "I still don't know your name." He looked at her, tired but calm. "I'm Elias." She nodded. "Elias. Thank you." She stood in front of the mirror, alone in the quiet room. The coat Elias had given her lay folded on the bed now. Her children were sleeping peacefully in the next room, soft breaths rising and falling under thick blankets. "Ow," The ship was silent, floating in deep orbit. But inside her, the noise hadn't stopped. Nija's hands trembled as she touched her arm. There it was, burned into her skin. The auction brand. Number 36. Still faintly glowing, even after days. In for freedom. She rubbed it, but it didn't fade. It wasn't just ink or heat. It was the memory burned underneath. Every hand that grabbed her, every voice that shouted her price, every time she was told, don't speak, just obey. She looked away. Her soul hadn't been sold. Right. But her body had been offered like meat. Now even in freedom she couldn't forget how it felt. Later, she walked into the ship's small kitchen. Elias was there, fixing something under a panel. Grease smudged across his forearm, small cut across his cheek, unbandaged. He looked up and nodded. They're asleep? She nodded like stones. He smiled softly. Good. She sat down at the table slowly, her posture stiff, her hands tight in her lap. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then she asked, Why didn't you touch me? Elias paused. Do you mean? After the auction, she said, eyes locked on him. You paid more than anyone. I thought you were going to, you know. He set down his tool and leaned back, letting the question settle. You're not something to touch. You're someone who needed help. Her throat tightened. No one had ever said that to her, not even before she was captured. In her world, status was power, and she had none. She was just a mother useful if she could breed strong minds. Otherwise, forgotten. Everyone saw my body, she said quietly. He didn't care who I was, not even my name.
I saw your eyes first,
Elias said. That's how I knew you were still fighting.
Right.
Yao looked down at the table. You don't know how much I hate this brand. I want to tear it off. Elias didn't move closer. He didn't reach across the table or offer her comfort with his hands. Instead, he said then, don't let it tell your story. Let it remind you that you survived it. That night, she stayed awake again. Not because of fear, because of thinking. She walked quietly into the room where her children slept. One of them stirred, then smiled and whispered, Mama. She bent down and kissed his forehead. Sleep. We're safe. As she turned to leave, she noticed Elias sitting in the hall. He wasn't asleep. He was reading something on a small screen. What are you doing out here? She asked. He smiled faintly. Guard duty. There's no danger. Habit, I guess. She leaned against the doorway. Her voice was softer now. You could sleep in your room. I sleep better when I'm near people I care about. She didn't know what to say to that. So she walked past him, but then stopped and turned back. Her hand hovered in the air for a moment, shaking, then slowly rested on his shoulder. Thank you, she said. Not just for saving me, for not breaking me. He looked up at her. The lights above were dim, but he could see her eyes had lost that dead, glassy look. There was fire in them again, and something else. Hope. The next morning, Nija walked into the cargo bay alone. She stood beneath the open ceiling vent, where starlight filtered through, and with slow, calm fingers, she drew her hair back and traced over her brand once more. Then she pulled out a small tool and pressed it against the mark. It sparked and burned, but she didn't scream. When it was done, the number was no longer glowing. Instead, over the old brand, he had carved one word in her language. It meant, still alive. The ship drifted in silent space above a red-banded moon. No signals, no alarms, no movement. Just peace. Inside, the small dining area smelled like something warm. Elias stirred a pan over the heating coil, simple food sizzling gently. The children sat nearby, giggling over a broken old screen that played music in strange tones. Nija watched them from the hallway, arms crossed over her chest. She didn't understand this feeling in her chest. It wasn't fear anymore. It wasn't anger. It was unfamiliar. Safe. The boy reached out and tugged Elias's sleeve. Will you sing again? I only know Earth songs, Elias replied. Sing it. He chuckled, wiped his hands, and hummed a few lines, rough and deep. A human lullaby. The girl clapped at nay. I stepped inside, quiet. Elias saw her and smiled, but didn't get up. She sat across from him, looking at the food. You cook? Enough. To survive, he said. You don't have to do this. He looked at her, confused. Do what? Be kind? After the children ate and went to bed, Nija sat alone with Elias in the cockpit. The stars passed slowly outside the glass. I used to believe love was a contract, she said. Something agreed upon by bloodlines, traditions, or breeding purpose. Elias listened without interrupting. She continued. When my first mate was chosen for me, we were tested for psychic compatibility. No emotion, just logic. He didn't even speak to me after the birth. Elias said nothing. I never believed a human could feel anything toward someone like me, she said quietly. Your people, you were enemies once, still are. In some places, Elias admitted. Then why do this? She asked, her voice suddenly sharp. Why risk your life to rescue a stranger? Why cook for children that aren't yours? Why treat a branded woman like she's whole? Was low. Because I don't see what others saw. She blinked. I don't see a slave. I see a mother, he said. I see someone who didn't break. Someone stronger than anyone I've met. The brand was still there. The brand was still theirs. Now, but faded. You're not in debt to me, Elias said softly. You don't owe me anything, but if you stay, you'll never be sold again. Her breath caught. Stay. No one had ever asked her to stay before, they commanded. Ordered. Owned, but this. This was something else. The next morning, Nija rose before the others. She cleaned the dishes. She folded the clothes. She even repaired one of the heating vents with tools she barely knew how to use. When Elias came in, rubbing sleep from his eyes, he froze. She looked up from the floor, wiping her hands. What are you doing? He asked. I'm helping, she said simply. You don't have to. I know, she said, but I want to. Elias gave a slow smile. You don't have to earn your place here. She walked closer, standing just inches away. I know, but I'm not used to being wanted, so if I do too much, it's because I'm scared you'll change your mind. His smile faded. I won't. Later that day, while the children napped, Nija stood outside Elias's room, holding something in her hands. A cloth pouch. She knocked once and stepped inside. I want to give you this, she said. He looked. Inside the pouch, it was a charm made from woven silver threads, shaped like two stars circling a moon. What is it? In my culture, she said, we give this only to those we trust with our lives. He held it carefully. It's beautiful. It's rare, she said. And it means I trust you. Elias looked up, but she was already turning to leave. Before she could exit, he asked, Do you think I could ever be? You trust? She stopped at the door. Her voice was quiet. I don't know what love looks like between our kinds. But if it feels like this, maybe I've already started. That night, after the lights dimmed and the ship hummed gently through space, Nija lay awake beside her children. She thought of chains. She thought of cold auction rooms. She thought of branding heat and silent tears. And then she thought of a man who gave her a coat, who never touched her without asking, who hummed lullabies to children he didn't create. She smiled softly to herself. She had never been owned, but maybe. Now she was finally being chosen. The stars were calm, but peace never lasted long. Far from the main colonies, a shadow moved in silence, a bounty ship marked in red glyphs from the outer houses. Its scanners had locked onto a signal. The signal belonged to Nija, and the price. On her head had just doubled, back on Elias's ship. Everything seemed normal. Nay was teaching her children how to recognize star routes. She drew glowing lines on the floor with a training pen, while the little ones laughed and made shapes out of them. Elias leaned in the doorway, watching. For the first time, the ship didn't feel cold, felt like home. Then the alert pinged, A. Soft beep. Nothing urgent. But Elias's face changed. He walked to the console and tapped the screen. His brows tightened. What is it? Nige asked, standing quickly. A bounty flag, he said. Encrypted, posted, less than an hour ago. Face went pale. Who posted it? She asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned the screen toward her. There was a symbol, one she recognized instantly. It was the crest of her former owner, the war merchant, the one who had painted her body and stripped her name. He wants you back, Elias said. Dead or alive? That night, the ship drifted into a quiet asteroid field to hide from long-range scanners. Elias disabled all outside signals. Still, he sat in the cockpit with a blaster in hand, watching the sensors. Nija came in, her face calm but tense. He won't stop, she said. I know. He'll come for the children, too. I know. She sat beside him. You should have left me at the auction, she whispered. I didn't want to, he replied. I don't want you to die for me. Looked at her, eyes steady. I'm not dying for you, he said. I'm living for all three of you. They didn't get a warning when the bounty hunters arrived. Just a flash of light and the ship rocked hard, shaking the children from their beds. Explosions cracked across the hull. Elias grabbed his coat, tossed a blaster to Nija, and shouted, Get the kids into the crawl space. She didn't argue. She grabbed her son and daughter and rushed them into the hidden floor hatch under the storage unit. Stay quiet, she whispered. No matter what you hear. They nodded, trembling. Elias met her by the airlock. They're forcing a manual override, he said. I can hold them off. She didn't wait for permission. She pulled the second blaster from the wall and stood. Beside him, I fought before I was sold, she said. I'll fight again now for them. He looked at her once, proud, not afraid. Then the door blew open. The fight was brutal. Two bounty hunters stormed the ship, masked. Armored fast, Elias took one down with a shoulder blast. The other hit him hard, knocking him back. Nija moved like fire. Spinning low, she struck the attacker in the throat with her elbow, then fired twice. The body dropped. More were coming. She helped Elias to his feet. He was bleeding from his side. Fall back to the rear corridor, he said, panting. We can't lead them to the kids. Then we make our stand here. Minutes passed like hours. Smoke filled the halls. Nija's arm burned. A cut across. Her cheek bled down her neck, but they were still standing. Finally, the emergency doors slammed shut. Elias had triggered the ship's isolation protocol. They were safe. For now, Nija fell beside him, exhausted. You're hurt, she whispered. I'll live. She pulled off a strip of her sleeve and wrapped it around his wound. Thank you, he said. She looked at him, face covered in ash. I told you I'm not a slave, she said. I'm a mother. He smiled weakly. I never thought otherwise. Later, when the children crawled out and saw the damage, they didn't cry. They ran to Nija and wrapped their arms around her. She held them tightly, tears silently falling from her eyes. Then Elias limped over, crouched low, and opened his arms, and the children ran to him. He wrapped all three of them in his embrace. No one spoke. No one had to. The family had been forged in fire, and it was stronger than chains. Stronger than brands, and stronger than the bounty that tried to break it. 3 weeks passed. The scars on their bodies had begun to fade. But the memories stayed quiet, deep, and heavy. Elias's side was still sore, but he never complained. He moved slower now, favoring his left leg, yet his eyes were calm, carried. No anger for the pain he endured, only quiet focus. Nija's movements were sharper, now trained again. Every corner of the ship had her touch, clean, organized, steady, not as a servant, as someone who belonged. The children laughed more. They ate better. They stopped flinching at shadows. Still, something unspoken lingered between them all. Something legal, something final. They arrived at the outpost on Deltanine quietly, under the name Family Medical Request. But it wasn't for medicine. It was for registration. The outpost was small, clean, and neutral, far from the politics of Earth and alien colonies. It was one of the few places in the quadrant where someone like Elias could file for cross-species guardianship. He stepped into the office, holding the small hands of both children. The woman behind the desk looked up. She was old, human, sharp eyes behind thin lenses. Name. She asked. Elias Ward. He said, Purpose? I'd like to adopt them? She looked past him at Nija, who stood near the wall, her arms crossed protectively. Her eyes didn't waver. They're not human, the woman said flatly. No. There's no legal mating record. There's no shared DNA. No treaty clause between your species. I know that too. The woman sighed. And yet, here you are. She pulled out a tablet. Write down why, she said. Elias blinked. Why? Yes, in your words. Why do you want them to be yours? He sat down, hands shaking slightly. The children waited beside Nija. Her expression was unreadable. He stared at the screen, thinking of what to write, but the words came. I want to adopt them because they are not a burden. They're not someone else's problem. They're not future soldiers or test subjects or breeding stock. They're children, innocent, curious, and strong. They're already calling me father. I didn't ask them to. They just did. And the woman who gave birth to them? She's not mine either. But I'd die to protect her. It may not be enough for the law, but it's more than enough for me. He handed the tablet back. The woman read in silence. Then, without a word, she stamped the page. Application accepted. Return in 3 days for review. That night, Elias sat alone in the common area. Nija entered quietly, standing behind him. You didn't ask me? She said. He turned, startled. About adopting them, she added. I'm sorry, he said. I should have. She stepped forward. No, you shouldn't have to, because I already decided. He looked at her. She sat down beside him. I've watched how they run to you when they're scared. How they sleep better when you hum. How they call you home without even knowing what that word means. He lowered his gaze. You think I'm trying to replace someone? He said. I'm not. She shook her head. You're not replacing anything. You're building something. He was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, Do I frighten you, Nija? No, she whispered. Do you trust me? With everything. I have left. Then will you stay? She looked him in the eyes. I'm not chained to you. I'm not owned. You didn't buy me. You saved me. She took his hand and placed it over her heart. I stay because I choose to. 3 days later, the Outpost issued the documents. Official guardianship granted. The children now carried new ID tags linked not to a lab or auction house, but to a man who once stood silently at the back of a crowd and saw something no one else did that evening. Back aboard the ship, Nija sat in her room. Alone, she pulled out the old cloth that once held her tribal charm. Then, carefully, she wrapped the adoption papers in it and placed them inside a locked box. A box that once held her old auction tag. She sealed it and whispered, This is who we were, but not who we are. And just outside her door, Elias stood quietly, not listening to the words, but feeling every one of them in his chest. The hall was quiet, but not because it was empty. It was silent out of respect. Rows of alien refugees, survivors, and elders filled the silver seats of the Unity Hall on the outpost moon of Neroth. All had suffered. Some had escaped auctions. Others had lost families in wars no one even recorded. And now, one of their own was standing at the front. Nawai, no longer branded, no longer bound. She wore white, simple and clean. A robe from her mother's culture, stitched with silver thread around the edges. On her left arm, the scar of the number 36 had been covered. In its place was a new mark, circle surrounding 2 stars, a symbol of protection, of survival. A family. Elias stood off to the side, one hand resting on the shoulders of the 2 children. They wore matching robes not because anyone asked them to, but because they wanted to. Is she nervous? Elias smiled. Maybe a little. She's still the strongest one here, said the girl proudly, at the front of the room. The elder in ceremonial armor raised his voice. Nija of the Mindweavers. Do you come before this council by your own will? I do, she said, clearly and without hesitation. You were once sold, he said. Branded, silenced, numbered. What is your request today? She stepped forward. I asked. She said to reclaim my name fully and freely. To erase the number and to add a bond not by blood, but by choice. The crowd stirred. The elder nodded. And what name do you offer now as truth? She turned her head just slightly toward the human man standing with her children. Then reached back to the elder. My name, she said, is Nija Ward. Gasps echoed. A human surname. On this moon, it wasn't illegal, but it wasn't common either. It meant not just alliance, not just gratitude. It meant family. It meant she wasn't just staying with Elias. She was standing with him forever. Later that evening, the crowd had cleared, but the afterglow of the moment still lingered. And AI stood on the overlook balcony. Gazing up at the stars, Elias stepped up beside her. You didn't have to take my name, he said softly. I know, she replied. That's why it matters. He looked at her arm. The mark suits you better than that number ever did. She smiled. The number said, I was property. This mark says I survived. That I chose. That I belong. He looked at her closely. And do you? He asked. She nodded. Slowly, yes. I belong with you. Not because you saved me, but because you gave me a place where I didn't have to be saved anymore. Inside the ship, the children were already rearranging the small sleeping quarters. This is our room now, the girl announced. And Elias's is across the hall. The boy frowned. But where will Mom sleep? Both turned to the door. Where Nija had just walked in, she glanced at Elias, who was standing behind them. I'll be with him, she said gently. We're a family now. The children didn't even blink. Okay, the girl said, hopping onto the bunk. We get more lights in here, though? Yours are too boring. Elias laughed. I'll work on it. As the stars turned slowly outside the ship's window, the family sat together on the floor sharing food. Stories and laughter that had been stolen from them for too long. No auctioneer could take this. From them, no bounty could threaten it. No mark could rewrite what they had become. A mother, a father, 2 children. One home chosen, not chained. That night, Nija stood alone for a moment, holding the old auction cloth in her hand one last time. She opened the airlock. Quietly, gently, then she let it go. It floated into the stars, small and forgotten. She didn't need it anymore, because she was no longer 36. She was Nija Ward. And for the first time in her life, she was finally free.